All right, so we're back. Now I'm going to go ahead and get back into my slides a little bit. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and share screen now. And I'm back on my screen here. All right, let's see, and I want my PowerPoint. All right, so that was our celebrity interview, Nathan Adair. So just a few administrative things. One of the things we've talked about in the class, and Laura and I have sort of talked about, we field a lot of email messages. One of the tools I'm sharing with you now on the screen is something called a Pareto Chart. And it's something we use a lot of times in the define phase to get a handle on what's the problem that we should focus on. I've actually used it here to do an analysis of the grading scheme for this class. So if you remember sort of as far as our class goes, my marker, so we've got a comprehensive exam for this class. Now this is for the green belt students and for the black belt students. It's worth 40%. So here we are at the 40% level. We've got a mini project that's worth 25% of your grade. We've got the online quizzes from MoreSteam, which are worth 20% of your grade. There are actually 11 of those. We've got a practice test that's worth 5%. We've got movie quizzes. So the movie quizzes in total are sort of down here at this level. But also remember, we got 8 of these movie quizzes. And we've got lecture quizzes. We've got 8 of them. So there's that. And then we've got on-time completion of the MoreSteam quizzes. So I guess the point I want to make is when you see that you're getting 3 points for some homework or assignment, like the resume was worth 3 points, that's what its value is in respect to the total time of the class. So when you look at what are you focusing on, what's important to get you the best grade, I would certainly be sort of thinking about, well, how am I going to do really well in that final exam at the end of the class, okay? So that's just something that gives you a little bit of a visual explanation. Nathan talked about, making things visual. So this is a visual look at what that grade book looks like. So another thing with regards to grading, one of the things that we're going to add to our tracking metric, as I talked about, is some sort of control chart with regards to how you guys are doing on your lecture quizzes, like a quiz on Nathan, what Nathan talked about, and also on your movie quizzes. Laura and I worked together. We came up with this little rubric here. So really for each one of those 3 lecture quizzes, so for the lecture quiz on Nathan, you need to tell me in 50 words or less, what were the key points Nathan made? How is that related to Lean Six Sigma or to this class? And how might you apply some of the things he talked about to your mini project? So each one of those questions we're going to break in and evaluate on 2 parts. One is on topic. So when you do your response, was it related to the topic or unrelated to the topic? And do you have specific quotes or examples related to key points that Nathan made? So that's going to be one way we're going to evaluate you. And then the other way we're going to evaluate you is on the thought content. So if there's obviously no thought, you just wrote a bunch of gibberish, right? We might even give you 1 point for that. If you don't do it at all, there's 0 points. For some thought is given, it relates or connects ideas, we give you 2 points. And if you have strong or unique insight and takes an obvious step beyond what was talked about, we're going to give you 3 points for that. So we're going to get into evaluating those. It turns out on the first assignment that we gave you, the first set of lecture and movie quizzes, we neglected on the Google form to ask you for your name. So we got a bunch of responses to these quizzes that we don't know who they belong to. So we're going to give everybody a pass on those first 2 quizzes. We'll call it a good practice. So we'll give you everybody full points for those. But as we come on, and now we're going to use the Moodle system, and its online grading is a little bit more effective than the ones we have with our Google form. And we'll be evaluating on these specific things, and we'll be creating a control chart to make that happen. You'll also notice that on-time completion is a part of your quiz. So if you get it, within 1 week, you get 3 points. If you get on time, you get 6 points. But that's really only 1/6 of it. So that's like 1 point total if it's on time. Give that a little bit of thought. This will be posted up on the Moodle website so you can look at it. Any questions on how we're going to be evaluating these quizzes? In lean parlance, this is what we call operationalizing a measure. So let's see. So I did have one hand up.
So Eric, this is Cassie Waters.
Yeah, hey Cassie, what's your question?
Is that I hear you talk about the Google Drive and then the Fullerton Drive. So
Right.
Is there going to be one site where things are going to be posted, or are we going to be going to 2 different sites?
No, everything's going to be on the Fullerton portal, right? That's where we're going.
All right.
So we're going to move all that stuff that was on the Google Drive over to the Fullerton portal, and I think we'll be a lot happier with that. Okay? So
Thank you.
It's going to be one-stop shopping. All right. Okay, so lean movies. So what I want to do is just a quick discussion about the movie you saw, not this week. This week's movie is the TPS history movie. But what I want to talk about is a little bit about Stu Leonard. So could somebody give me, raise your hand and tell me what some of the key points were in the Stu Leonard movie, or some key remembrances from what that movie was about? Yeah, Ravi, what do you think about the movie? Let's see, Ravi, is your microphone unmuted? So I thought I had Ravi there a second ago. Maybe we'll sort of come back in. So let me ask you a question that's a little bit more active. Yeah, Dominic, you got your hand raised. What do you think of Stu Leonard?
Sure. So I'm just going to the summary of my response notes, but I like the simplicity in his delivery, right, for such a complex idea that he was speaking about. And it's really the softer side of lean and the respect for people, right, at multiple levels, how we saw that in the customer satisfaction and feedback. Which does serve as like the policy and the cornerstone for the company. Right. And then I really liked how he touched on the empowered employee, understanding the cornerstone policy as a core value and how they work to reinforce it through continuous improvement. And then I like those examples. They were very well represented.
Yeah. And the thing I like, so Stu Leonard isn't a lean video. It's a customer service video, but you hit it right on the head. I think those two big themes come through real strong for me. And one is that empowerment, that engagement of employees in problem solving. And the other part is the big focus on customer satisfaction.
Yep.
Right? Rule number 1, the customer's always right. Rule number 2, if the customer's ever wrong, reread rule number 1, right?
Exactly.
So those are things I think we can carry through in lean. And one of the reasons I show this movie first in a lean course is because I think in lean everything should start from the customer. Everything should start with, well, what does the customer want? What will make the customer happy? Once we know that, we can just derive all these different things that we're going to do. Because we want to make the customer happy, we've got to engage employees in problem solving. We need to develop tools. We need to train them. We need to make these sorts of things happen. Any other comments about Stu Leonard? Anybody have any Stu Leonard experiences that they want to share? Yeah, Judy, what do you have to say?
Well, it's not so much that I had a Stuart Leonard-like experience, although I probably have. But one thing that struck me kind of forcibly in the storytelling that he was doing was that at the same time he was focusing on customer satisfaction and the customer's always right, and even sometimes to a fairly extreme degree of customer demand. He was also really focused on the good of his organization and his bottom line as well. And they were not in conflict. They went hand in hand in a couple of ways. One was that that obviously a happy customer that returns is going to make you more money than one that leaves. But also that he was basing that satisfaction on what the customer themselves identified as what would be satisfying to them. And he made the point that, the customer's always right might sound kind of scary and like you were going to be, taking losses and, giving away the keys to the castle, when in fact, the customer frequently wanted much less than you would be willing to give.
Yeah, so like 2 points on that. I love the $50,000, written across the forehead. They're all the employees were told to sort of visualize as people were pushing their shopping carts around the store, which was their 10-year monetary value to Stu Leonard. So I thought that was really good. And then there was that story about the broken tooth from the employee that bit into that crusty sourdough bread and sent him the dental bill, and they actually paid off on that. So some amazing stories there. I always like that Stu Leonard thing, and for organizations that I deal with, showing that video sort of early on to get a sense of like where should we be and where should we position. I think it sends a great message. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Just tips and tricks. I wanted to highlight another tool that you have available to you on that side panel, that left-hand panel on MoreSteam. And so if you click over there, there's a workbook that you can open up. So if you're one of those people that sort of hand writes their notes as they go through the training sessions, you can download little PDFs for each one of these sessions and for each little group of slides here. So as you look at this, so you can little PDF workbooks for each one of these things that talk about these sessions that you're learning about on MoreSteam. And that can serve to help you maybe when you get to your final exam and you have to do these things and find key points quickly. The other thing is you can download all of these onto multiple different types of e-readers, Kindles or iPads. So you've got essentially all these notes that you can sort of keep as a companion as you go through the training sessions. Any other tips or tricks anybody wants to share that they've learned in going through these MoreSteam sessions that can maybe help everybody out, get a little bit more out of it, a little more value, move a little faster, reduce cycle time? If you do, just raise your hand. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I just read Ravi's chat that he's having a problem with his microphone. So, okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So just a few highlights from the online stuff. So in Define, one of the things that we're really after is the voice of the customer. So in that Stu Leonard movie, you saw how important we think the customer is in a lean organization, that place of preeminence. What we're trying to do is, as in everything in lean and certainly in MoreSteam, we're looking at things as a process. We've got a voice of the customer process, where first we identify some target segment or market. We gather active and passive information. We sort that out. We develop some critical to quality characteristics tree, and ultimately translate that into specifications or some clear definition for the people on the floor, what the customer wants and how we're going to make that happen. Another key thing that I really like and appreciate is this idea of, an operational definition. So an operational definition has 3 components. It has some criteria, what the standard is. So when we've got a standard, we can measure a gap between the performance we're getting and the performance we need. There's some sort of test or specific procedure, how do we measure that gap? And then there's a decision, a determination as to whether or not the test results are indicative as to whether we're achieving the criterion we want to achieve. So when we talk about doing your mini project in 10 different tools, one of the tools you can apply is simply, for the problem or for the measure that you're trying to use for a particular problem, what is your operational definition? Give me those 3 different parts and tell me what that is, and one of your tools is done for your project. Okay, it can be that simple. All right. I just want to share with you, I try to practice what I preach a lot. So one of the tools that we use for capturing the voice of the customer is we use something called a quality functional deployment or a quality functional house. And this is a picture of what that looks like. What we sort of do with that is we look at what the customer requirements are, and we're going to try to list those down on one side of the chart. So if we got a list of what the requirements are, we want to know what the priority is for those different things, right? And then we're going to try to figure out, well, how are we going to try to achieve these different requirements? So what are the technical things we're going to do in our operation to make those happen? We're going to look at the interaction between these 2 things. So we're going to look at what the interactions are. And then ultimately, by doing all this, we're going to try to figure out what are deployment priorities. What are the priorities that we want to do for implementing the voice of the customer in our organization? So just to sort of share with you a little bit, one thing I'm doing is I'm trying to capture the voice of the customer for our lean work group. And this is the lean as in LEAN. So it stands for Lean Educators Academic Network. And we're trying to develop a website that we can use for our organization. So I spent some time with our group brainstorming what are the things that the customer, what are the things that the customer wants? So here's a list of, get my pen marking again. So here's a list of what the customer wants are. I'm asking the people on our team to score these things from 1 to 5, 5 being the customer really thinks that's important, to 0, not important at all. So once I get these things, we're going to put those into a quality functional deployment house. And this is a picture of a quality functional deployment table taken from MoreSteam engine room. So you can go ahead and put your what's in. So put your what's in down here on this table, right? Once I get my 1 to 5 values, I'm going to put them in here in the importance. We're going to figure out, like, how is our web development team going to go ahead and make these things happen, the hows. and we're going to get, relationships between these things. Once we multiply the strength of the relationship times, the importance, we sum those over the column, and we kind of get down here. For each one of our specifications, we get an idea of what the priority should be in our deployment. So this is an example of a quality functional deployment. I use this all the time. When I talk to Nathan and said, hey, what are some of your go-to tools? This is one of my go-to tools, especially in starting out on a project. Okay. Any questions about that from the class? So quality functional deployment, you can read about it more on MoreSteam. There's, like I said, there's templates for doing this on Engine Room. There's also, we're going to be sharing with you Excel templates to be able to do this also. And those will be on our Moodle website that you can download. All right then, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. So the session 4 is the last section in Define. This is all about process mapping. So if I could only do 2 tools in my Define stage, and you only have to do 2 tools in your Define for your mini project, one of those tools is automatically your project charter. The other tool I would do is some sort of process map, some sort of flow chart. And this session talked about a lot of different ways to do flow charting, valuated, non-valuated flow charts, value stream maps. What I'm showing you on this screen is sort of the gold standard for Six Sigma folks, especially, maybe not so much Lean folks, but Six Sigma folks are always doing SIPOC diagrams. So SIPOC stands for Supplier, Input, Process, Output, Customer. So the way you create that is you start out by making, figure out sort of what the high-level process flow is for your process. So what are the sort of the main stages or the main steps in your process? And then for each one of those steps, what are the inputs? Who's the supplier of those inputs? What's the output? And who's the customer for that output? So by going through this, I got a lot of information about the process and sort of a deeper understanding of what's going on by making this sort of SIPOC diagram. Any questions from anybody in the class on SIPOC or process mapping in general? Questions from things you saw or didn't understand in the MoreSteam training? Okay then, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. So as far as hidden gems in this material, some things I would point out. Affinity diagram, so in Engine Room, sort of, excuse me. Oh, did I just lose my PowerPoint? Yeah. Let me go ahead and reopen that. Somehow I accidentally clicked and closed down my PowerPoint, or it seems that way. Oh no, I got it up here right in front of me. Good one. So let's go current slide. And somehow I bopped back a bunch. So let me just go ahead and catch us up here. So the gem I want to talk about was affinity diagrams. So affinity diagram is something after you've brainstormed a list of items, maybe potential problems or potential solutions. What you want to do is you want to maybe group those. And so an affinity diagram is a way to sort of group items on a brainstorm into discrete categories. So Engine Room has the functionality to be able to do that. You might want to check that out. There's also the capability to do SIPOC diagrams in Engine Room. I also want to really sort of highlight a feature, this define toll gate review. So at the end of every one of these DMAIC process steps, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, there's going to be a toll gate at the end. And maybe what you want to do is you want to go straight to the end of the session you start. So before you get into the measure session, which is the new thing you have to study online, go all the way to the last measure session, open up the toll gate review, and find out what are the questions that you're trying to answer in this particular session. So for define, we're trying to find out, well, what are the questions we're trying to answer? What are we trying to accomplish? Or what's our mission? What's the project scope? Why are we working on this project? Who is the customer? What's the output? Or what's the value that's important to the customer? What are the operational definitions or the critical to quality characteristics? So these are the key questions you're trying to answer in this stage of the process. And the way a toll gate is set up is you're not allowed to proceed to the define stage until you can answer all these questions. Now, just a word of warning, this is what we'd have to do in a full Greenbelt project. You'd have to answer all these questions. Because you're just doing a mini project, just go ahead and do the 2 tools, answer a few of these key questions, and then you're going to go ahead and move on. This is a sample of what you do in a larger project, and that's why we call it a mini project, all right? The other thing I want to highlight is the Master Black Belt videos. At the end of every one of these, each one of the 5 phases, there's Master Black Belts talking about the define stage, talking about the measure stage. What did they learn? So it's a little version of the same sort of thing you got when we were talking to Nathan about what does he do as a lean manager or as a lean facilitator. These are people that are professionals in this area, have a lot of experience, and check out the videos at the end, all right? That's it for hidden gems. At this point, I'm done with what I wanted to talk about this evening. Are there any questions or comments on what we've learned, questions about from an administrative standpoint? Anything you guys would like to bring up? Okay, I'm gonna wrap up then for tonight. One thing I want to do is I mentioned it early on, but I think I would like to do this at the end. We did have one guest who has joined us. You can see him on the screen, Michelle Bawden there. Michelle has been talking about maybe teaching a class at Cal Poly, but I'm really flattered that he sat through this whole class and listened to us talking about lean, because he's actually written 4 books on lean. And if you write down his name, you sort of Googled it, you could probably type the lean afterwards. You could probably see what some of those books are. But Michelle, thank you for joining us for this evening. And any comments you want to make or advice you can give to our students before we cut away?
Well, I was mostly looking at the process of how you run a class online this way, because it seems that the students are expected to learn the material from the MoreSteam, and then the class themselves are mostly for discussions and reviews, and so it's I'm beginning to understand how it's done, and I appreciate you letting me sit through this to understand it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Michelle. And this is what we try to do in this class is we try to use also a flipped classroom approach. So flipped classroom, rather than spending an hour and a half of me doing a boring lecture for students, they source that material outside. Maybe that could be in the form of reading some chapters from one of your books. And then when they come into the classroom or this online experience, then they're really sort of able to exercise the material a little more, maybe a little deeper into understanding.
Well, I can see how it can make it much more lively and more interesting. Yes.
Yeah. And Michael, you had a hand raised, Michael Ryder. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered if you could recap again, real quick, of what you're expecting for the project charter draft due on Sunday, correct?
Right. Let me go ahead and do a stop share here so I'm full screen. Yeah, so for that draft, if you go back, and I forget whether it's session 1 or 2 where MoreSteam talks about the project charter, you might want to sort of read through that session. I think they've got some examples of some good charters and some not so good charters there. You can go to the engine room. They've got an automated format for a charter, and you can fill in that format for your charter. Or there will be some, there's an Excel template that will post on the sort of new Fullerton portal that you can go ahead and fill out on that. What I'm looking for is sort of like an 80% completion. You won't necessarily be super finely tuned on how to fill in all the boxes on that, but think about getting to about an 80% point and filling out all those boxes, okay?
Okay, sounds good. And then for those of us that are still students who don't have an idea of exactly what the mini project is going to be, can we choose sort of any company that's out there and then kind of find a problem within there, or one that we can kind of think of, or?
No, yeah. So when you pick a project for this class, a couple of things. One, it has to be a process that you don't own, so an outside company, meets that criteria. But the second criteria should be that you have, inside access, right? So you want to work with a company where you can get in and talk to the employees or talk to the manager about the issue or the problem. That would naturally happen if you were working with somebody in your own company or with an internship that you had or a club you belong to. It could be a nonprofit, it could be a for-profit, but that's the kind of thing that you want to look for. You just don't want to, pick, well, I'm going to do mine on Southwest Airlines, and I don't know anybody in Southwest Airlines. Okay. Another good way to go for it is the friends and relatives approach. So if you got an uncle or an aunt, your mom or dad, let them be the sort of the project for you.
Okay, so the draft should reflect that company for that project.
Yeah. And go ahead and what I want you to do is make a solid attempt at that draft and get in the right company. Now, I got to say that the mechanism for the draft is to make sure that everybody in the class is engaged and has like some idea that they're going to try to work on. I'm going to be pretty flexible in letting you switch. So within some company you're working with, you said, oh, it's not problem A, I'm going to switch to problem B. That's okay. You can even switch, companies. Like I started out working with my mom's accounting firm, but I found, I'm better off working with my internship at, Lockheed Martin or whatever it is, right? So you can switch. The idea is you got to get your feet wet, you need to get engaged, and then when you do your final project charter, it will reflect the actual project that you did. Okay? And you really don't have to add, you can consult me if you want to switch, but you don't have to get permission to switch or to change, all right? I'll be interested in that final result.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I've been trying to sort of email and get a foot in the door for some local companies, but so far I haven't heard anything back yet. So okay. I guess I'll keep trying on that one.
All right, well, come up with something by Sunday at 11 p.m.
Yeah, okay, thanks a lot.
All right, Cassie, you got your hand raised? So Cassie, do you have a question?
No, I did not.
Okay, hand down. Let's see, is it Kiwi or Kiwi or
Yeah.
What's that?
It's Kiwi.
Kiwi. Okay, Kiwi, what's your question?
I had a quick question. It's about the tool plan assignment during week 6. I was just wondering if you were gonna, I guess, add a prompt online for us to kind of check it out and see what we're supposed to be doing then.
Okay. Yeah, I will, Laura, you want to take a note to make sure we add a prompt for that, that
I'm
question?
sorry, which assignment is that for?
It's the tool plan. So really, we just want people to give us a list of the tools that they plan to use for their mini project.
Oh, the 10 tools list?
Right, the 10 tools list. And once again, those are, we want you in week 6 to think about which tools you're going to use. If you need to switch them later on, that's okay. But
Do you have to like
that's why we have an assignment.
of it?
Say what?
Do you have to like I guess use them in a particular in the problem that you're solving, or you just write the list of tools?
I would. So I'm going to say the ethical and the right way to do it is to make sure that the tools you pick are going to be applicable to your project.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. You know, whether I'd be able to tell or not, that's another question. But I want you to, go ahead and give it a good effort. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Let's see. So, Michael, did you still mean to have your hand raised, or you want to lower your hand? Okay.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Good thing. All right. Any other questions? Judy, you got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in with you before we start wrapping things up and say that I did figure out that I had server rules in place that were blocking that email from Fullerton.
All right.
And
Okay.
I sent him an email asking him to resend because unfortunately it isn't a case of going into a junk folder.
Oh, really? They actually deleted it for you, huh?
It went into, yep.
Interesting. Okay. Well, good. So you're going to contact Matt and try to connect directly then.
Right, and I copied you and Laura.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully that'll take care of it and everything will be okay. All right. Let's see. Dominic, you have a question?
Yeah, mine's along the same lines. Just want to make sure that I get the access to that Fullerton thing. Because I'm going through my company email,
Okay.
the securities are pretty robust.
Yeah.
I know I have sent Laura an email from my personal. So I don't know if Laura or who I need to contact in order to get that sent over to
Right.
my personal email, just kind of as a contingency.
Yeah. So Laura, can you make sure that we close the loop with Dominic and Matt on making sure they send to his personal email? So Dominic, you sent Laura a copy of your personal email connection?
Yeah, I'll put it here in the chat. It's fine.
Okay. All right. So go ahead and take care of that. Let's see. Any other questions? And I'm assuming, Judy, everybody's, lower your hand after you've raised it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop recording button now at this point.